top of the hour. Dan, David, and I will try to cover for Josh this evening. A couple of topics we wanted to share. One is just a couple minutes on the UAS knowledge exam. There's plenty going on in addition to uh, the remote ID NPRM. That we're doing with the FAA. And as I've mentioned on some of the posts that we've made, uh, we have been able to connect with companies, organizations, and associations that have decades of experience with the FAA, and it's provided us good background. And we were pretty early on tipped uh, to make sure that we encourage folks to provide, and I've quoted Bruce many times, that the comments should be personal, polite, professional, and constructive, and they also should be unique. So they should not be a copy and paste. And so that is something that was we echoed or verified by some of the FAA folks, and we had a couple of FAA staff and one FAA executive with us last week in Washington.
Yeah,
Briefly,
that knowledge test is very much so overshadowed by all of the NPRM stuff, but it's still important.
absolutely, absolutely, and so Dan took the lead on responding to a request
A request
for
for
information.
information.
Someone's got their mic on. If you're not speaking, if you go on mute. So back in I think it was the September timeframe, 2019, the FAA put out a request for information for the UAS recreational knowledge exam. And if you're not sure what I'm talking about, in the 2018 FAA Reauthorization Act, there was a requirement that a test must be performed or passed by all flyers of UAS. So that includes RC models, sailplanes, drones, etc. So for all of us. Um, uh, and so we were much of the information that was discussed with us. It's pretty standard with the FAA. FAA was embargoed. They asked us to please don't talk about any of the content that we talked about or that was put down as a set of agreed to requirements, if you will, from the organizations and companies that were represented. So FPVFC was one of 12 organizations that were invited to provide requirements to the FAA on the administration. And so the FAA has divided up the UAS knowledge test into two pieces, one the content, and they met with a group of companies and organizations in the April timeframe. And then from there, they created a set of questions. So the questions and answers are locked down. And this meeting last week was to discuss the administration of the test. And so, um, as I say, good set of discussions, um, things that they were asking about. Very much reflected a lot of the questions that were in the RFI, and that was public. So it's they were asking us questions like how long should it take, how do you administer it. They had a requirement that we had to be able to have a learning management system that was SCORM or SCORM compliant. Dan has taught me about what that means. A system that many universities around the U.S. use for tests and management of test grades. So we talked about the data, the management of what would be sensible in terms of um managing the privacy data, respecting and minimizing the amount of personal data that we have anywhere. And so there was having people who are deep into online training was very helpful. And we also had a good number of folks who were happily subject matter experts around unmanned aerial systems.
I find it interesting that they ask us how long the test should be when they pretty much have the questions locked down and are not going to change that. Like, well,
Yes,
how are we going to make it
just
any
check.
longer or shorter?
Right, just check. Well, yeah, they'll put it in in bigger font, so you have to read a little more slowly.
Right.
Yes, yeah. There
But
there
they
were a couple of
absolutely
moments
were
like that.
not ready to share what those test questions are at all.
The magic.
That's it. Shiny toy, shiny toy. But as I say, good discussion. We absolutely had the. I was surprised the number of FAA people that were there. We had one director in the UAS integration office, and we had no fewer than three FAA attorneys and a couple other folks. And it was good. There was a good representation and a great discussion. As I say, the questions or comments, as as I mentioned, or Dan, did you want anything that you wanted to add about the knowledge test?
No, not really. Just to say again that, yeah, it's been totally overshadowed by the NPRM. This is also something that a lot of people don't know is coming and are probably going to be surprised about when it does hit. And it's something to be concerned about. But hopefully we'll make the best of it. And you also had a great chance to meet a lot of those other companies or organizations that are going to be there. And I know way at
Yes.
the beginning you briefly mentioned some of those, but if you wanted to run over those 12 organizations again and who you had a chance to talk to more and things like that would be great for people to hear.
I, I will do. Let me find the list. I have it here. That was one of the topics we talked about, and so I think everyone agreed that we would have to be able to change the exam when remote ID comes into play.
I've got the answer. Broadcast only.
Okay,
Can I say something?
please.
Yeah, I just got a microphone and a camera. How about that? So is there any chance that our comments will make any kind of change in the future? And how much chance is there that these regulations will change in the future? Because I've seen them change several times over the past 5 or 6 years. I thought that 336 was the way that they were going to go, for instance.
Yeah, good question. Um, the quick answer is we don't know, um, and it's more than a little disconcerting when we think about all the input that the FAA had, the Aviation Rulemaking Committee, that what goes back to 2015-16. It's all sometimes called the ARC. Then the ASTM work group that
Uh-huh.
was working on UAS tracking and monitoring. That timed out in about October 2019, and that had been going on for over a year. And then I had a very minor role in a drone advisory committee tasking group that was approved in October of this past year and submitted to the FAA on the subject of remote ID. And so the folks who released the same organization, the UAS Integration Office, ignored pretty much most of the input from those three very serious pieces of work. So um, the the FAA is required to listen to the industry, required to listen to stakeholders, and so far um, they're not. And so our plan forward is to, and we talked about interesting comments from the FAA folks realize that they'd been listening for years, and they come out with the remote ID NPRM, and it's like really, there's a huge dichotomy from what was provided as input and what they came out with. And so we suspect that there was significant pressure applied to the FAA from Department of Homeland Security, and we are encouraged by folks across the FAA to take the comment period very seriously, and we are, and we'll provide, as we said, unique, personal, professional, constructive, polite comments to the FAA, and we at the subsequent to the March 2 end of comment period, we'll then start up a campaign to congressional representatives and senators. Will provide copy and paste templates. Unlike submissions or comments to the FAA, providing copy and paste templates to our congressional representatives does work. They do use counters, and so that's a fair way to work that. And one of the things that I was teasing the one of the FAA staff members is that there was a very significant positive that came out of the that has come out of the remote ID NPRM, and that is that they've brought together the whole UAS community like nothing else before. So they are absolutely a forcing function in a positive sense, and so we are working with, and we've provided the list of talking points, the distillation to 6 pages of the 319 pages, the FAQ, whatever we're writing, we happily share with folks across not only recreational UAS or drones, but also manned aviation, industries associations, and manufacturers. And so we've got some we've gotten some help from people in ALPA, AOPA, AIA. So these are aerospace and aviation industries, as well as manufacturing folks. And this is we've come to meet these people because of the work that we're doing with the FAA on the tasking groups. So we've, as Dan was saying, things are being overshadowed by the remote ID NPRM, and we're also working on the 2 tasking groups that came out of the October 2019 DAC. One was the UAS facility maps, and the second one was on one of the major group is beyond visual line of sight, and I'm leading a subgroup on Spectrum/C2, and that will be those reports will be published and hopefully approved by the DAC on February 27th.
So sort of getting back to what Volatronic's original question was, I think a lot of what you're saying is what gives me hope that what we're doing will make a difference, especially the part where you're talking about, we get the feeling from the FAA that some people, at least in the FAA, are not happy with this remote ID NPRM, and they want the community to point out the flaws in it, and they actually want to make it different. At least that's the hope I have.
Can I'd like to give an example, if you don't mind, of how the comments section, this 2-month period, actually works. So in 2016, the DEA wanted to schedule kratom and all its derivatives, which is just I wouldn't say over the counter, but it's just basically an Asian tree, the leaves that are crushed up. Sometimes, they try to distillate it, but nonetheless, it was in smoke shops and other things. Lots of people found it helpful to get off of pain medication, other things, but it was non-regulated at all. The DEA decided, we're going to put it in the same category as LSD and heroin. They opened up their 60-day window. They had so many comments within the first 30 days that it crashed their servers. And before the 60 days was even up, they took it off the table and said, all right, we're going to wait for an actual analysis from the FDA, and then we'll reconvene at a later time. Well, the FDA put their recommendation in and their analysis in 2018. That got ripped to shreds by the scientific community because it was completely flawed. Here we are, 2020. The DA has absolutely no plans to schedule it. So, if you want to know if it makes a difference, yes, it can.
That's good to hear. Yeah, and and I agree with Dan that certainly the folks who were sitting around the room on the knowledge exam were trying to point to that they listened carefully and closely back in April on the test content, and they promised that they were listening carefully to us last Tuesday. So, as I said, I'm gravely disappointed that the initial take on the, or at least what was published in the NPRM, was many critical and significant inputs were ignored. If someone's got a mic open.
Not me.
Thanks. Thank you. I
Yeah,
have
I just
found.
wanted to ask.
Yeah, go ahead.
To be honest, I'm okay with the whole entire transponder system as long as it's more open source and integratable into our drones. But yeah, I'm writing my comments right now on it on a Google Doc, and my whole entire outline right now is just to try to just urge this rev, at least make it.
Well,
Yeah, I think we lost him, and then he went on mute.
oh, can you hear me now?
I can hear Dave, but I think we lost Tired Flyer. But now he's coming back.
Sorry about that. Sorry about that. Yeah, just wanted to say that I'm actually writing my comments right now on Google Doc. I already found the link and stuff like that. So I think for now I'm just gonna try just to make the point that open source transponder system is an option. So that's my whole deal on my comment at least.
So Dave, do you want to say what have we done so far on the NPRM, and what are we working on next?
Absolutely. And so what we've created to date is these are we have links and Google Docs up on our website. So we've got a 6-page distillation of the NPRM. We've got an FAQ. We've also got I think it's about 8 or 9 pages of talking points, and the talking points have a table, and it tries to characterize the NPRM as it stands and what we would like it to be. And so we've tried to use a couple of tables to break the NPRM into groups that make sense and are sufficiently coherent in an emission and a aircraft, so that we're characterizing this is what we need to perform this type of mission. Our next step, one of the things that I started writing the other day, is our comments. And one of the things I should say is that in all of these documents, we've asked folks for comments, and so we're really interested in what do you think? What did we miss? Is this agreeable? Does this make sense? And so, in terms of a timeline, we want to be pencils down on the talking points document, and over the next several weeks we'll issue our comments, and we want to try to get comments back on the what we will submit as FPVFC, and then share the heck out of that with all of the organizations and different folks that we've met. Some of you have hopefully seen that we're working with, and we created a document with Drone U, and to me that's a great example of good cooperation, as well as the overlap between commercial and recreational. And so they put out a guidebook on how to prepare comments, and it's a good piece of work, and they included a number of our thoughts, as well as links back to our site and attribution. So just more sharing, and that's a way that we feel we're going to maximize um, the view. And if folks have not read it, there's a great little short paper from DJI written by Brendan Schulman, and it outlines the DJI position, but it's also very clearly goes through some of their significant concerns. And I know one of the concerns that the DJI has is the UAS limited device cannot power up if it can't see the sky, and it also, if it cannot connect to the internet, it won't power up and fly. So not being able to fly because of lack of connection is something that we feel it's one of the most overly restricted devices we've ever heard of. So that's certainly uh, one of the positions where that you've probably or hopefully have seen in the talking points. Dan, that looks like someone has just posted that the DJI comment in there. Was that?
Yep.
It
Yeah,
was
I
Dan.
posted both the Drone U advocacy kit link and the DJI, Brendan's little blog post there.
One thing that I would recommend too, just maybe to post somewhere, I highly recommend everybody get their comments in before 1 week prior to the cutoff date. I've got a lot of experience with government servers and their lack of bandwidth planning. And if everybody waits to the last week, there's a good chance a lot of the comments won't get submitted.
It's a great point. I was going to that perfect lead into. I will emphasize that. That is absolutely one of the comments that's been recommended to me. That so from the timing in terms of what are we going to try to do through February, early February, get the our comments written down and out there for comments from this community. Nail it down and start sharing across organizations, industry partners, associations, manufacturers, retailers, whoever is interested. They're welcome to see what comments we think are appropriate, and then approximately 2 weeks before March 2, we propose to post the FPVFC comments up to the FAA, and our comments, as an organization, will have a counter from the FAA as one, and so we can articulate that we're representing an organization and a community, and we've gone to great lengths to size the community of FPV pilots. We think is about approximately 150,000 across the United States, but we're not speaking for, we're not putting the physical comments in for everyone here. So we want this. We're creating. We hope articulate, and to say it again, personal, professional, constructive, polite comments to the FAA, and we hope that folks on the phone use these as a starting point to create your own personal story.
May I, as an aside, this is not really, well, it's kind of related, but it's not really related to the current discussion. I've noticed on AirMap, which I used, so I wouldn't be in violations of anything. It's changed. All the places that used to be restricted, like the prison nearby me, used to have orange around it. It's all gone.
It's probably catching up with the changes that were made in the exception as of May of 2019. And so if you are, for example...
I can fly with the prison now?
Not over the prison. No.
AirMap says it's cool.
No. Okay, I guess I took the bait. No, you can't. You cannot fly over the prison. Please don't. It won't be good for any of us. But there were there there were a number of positive changes that happened this year prior to those of us using recreation or flying under recreational operations and using Lance that were very positive. One is that if you live in or if you're going to fly in uncontrolled airspace, you just go fly and don't worry about it. And so I'm in a upstate New York area, and I have about 50 miles in either direction of uncontrolled airspace. That's a pretty nice place to be.
Yeah,
So
like
at least
I saw in Knoxville, it's got this big purple circle around McGee Tyson Airport, and it's got this like cookie cutter thing cut out from some, I guess, facility. But apparently, you don't have to get link permission to fly in there. But everywhere else, it's like got 400 feet, 200 feet, 100 feet, 0.
right. Yeah, if you are in controlled airspace, you do need to use Lance to gain approval
Land.
for that, and it will it'll kick back. Here's the maximum altitude above ground level that you're approved to fly in.
Yeah,
And
it's
so
too bad that the apps like Kitty Hawk and AirMap can't show you everything, because you sort of go to them to say, oh, can I fly here? But they don't include things like national park information and other restricted places where you're not allowed to fly.
Oh, they still outline the Obed River in red still, which is a darn shame because there are some cliffs there that would be just like, oh my God.
yes, and so one of the tasking group that I'm working on and that I'll be presenting at the DAC is about when you look at those grids on the facility map, they are around a mile by mile. There's 1 degree by 1 degree. So um, we're going to split that to a half degree, which means if it's 1 rectangle now, it'll be 4 rectangles in the future. At least that's the proposal. That's the recommendation to the FAA. And we've also proposed shielded operations. Let's see, is Bruce still on? Thank you, Bruce, for the idea. This is the concept of being able to fly below an obstacle or an obstruction. And if you're in controlled airspace, then you'd still use Lance, and if you're not, then you're fine to fly. But and
As
then
long
so
as it's not over the prison.
That's correct. A prison, a DoD site, base. Those are definitely places we're not supposed to fly. And
Y12 is right out.
okay. In addition, one of the things that continues a topic of discussion is what are the incentives that would be prudent for the FAA to put out there to encourage people to use remote ID, and that's something that to me, if we say, all right, I get it, remote ID is an okay thing for beyond visual line of sight, and that is our view. And so if we do that, then wouldn't it be great if we bought in for that type of equipment on board the drones, transponders, and whatever else, that there's something in return for this, like being able to fly over a national park on set days or things like that, be able to get additional benefits from municipalities to be able to take off and land where maybe we cannot today. So those are
No
topics
spotter.
of active discussion right now. So, more optimistic than certainly than the remote ID that we got on December 26th. Okay,
Yeah. Thanks, Dave, for giving us everybody an update on what the FPVFC has been up to and what we're working on next. I was wondering if we could ask Bruce Simpson to speak for a minute about where he's at, what are some of his plans, what he's working on, and anything he can give, any tips he can give us for working with the FAA on this, or whatever his plans are. I know he's got some great plans and he's not at liberty to speak to all of them, but whatever he can tell us would be great. If he's still there. Yep, there he is.
Yeah, excellent.
Yes, we can.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I have a couple of initiatives. Obviously, one of them we're probably aware of is the it would global drone day or whatever, where we try and get as many of the world's drones in the air at once and model aircraft to basically show that it's not going to cause the sky to fall and people will not die. So that's just one thing. And also, the problem is we can talk all we want to the FAA, we can talk all we want to the politicians, but we're small in number, we don't carry much weight. We have to use leverage, and that means we've got to get the public to talk on our behalf. So we have to get our message to the public, and the only really effective way to do that is through the mainstream media. So what I want to do is create some events that capture the attention of the mainstream media who want to recover these events, and then we can piggyback our message on the back of that to reach the people who currently think drones are evil, drones are spying on them, drones are going to stalk them all hours of the day. And so I want to, first of all, create the strategies to get the media's attention. As I say, the first one is the Global Drone Day, which will be setting a record. It should be the maximum number of drones ever flown at one time in the entire history of the planet. So yeah, that's probably the most public one I've got. Another one is to go through all the different regulations in the different countries and cherry pick them. You know, as you say, you've looked at the shielded operation and so forth. Now, every country has a different set of regulations, and every country has good aspects and bad aspects. So what I want to do is go through all the regulations and summarize the good and the bad, and then present to politicians and the FAA, of course, this is what we have seen working in other countries. We know this works because they're in, for example, in Canada, where they have no prescriptive rules for sub 250. There has not been, to my knowledge, one single incident involving a sub 250 craft that has endangered anybody or shut down an airport or anything. So you can use that as evidence to say, well, you don't need to have prescriptive rules. Follow in the footsteps of those countries that have already proven to have regulations that are totally effective. If you vary from that, you're taking a risk that your regulations will not be as good. And so there's that. And remember, we have to decide also, I think, if the NPRM is modified before it goes to the politicians, they may water it down a bit, which means it's more likely to pass. So I'm thinking, is it a good idea to have the NPRM modified? Because at the moment, it is so appalling. It's going to be, I think, a fairly easy job to convince the public and the politicians that it is not fit for purpose. You can't cancel a hobby because Amazon wants to fly noisy drones over your house. But if they tweak it a bit, it's more likely to get through. Should we focus on having the NPRM modified and weakened a bit to give us some edge? Or should we say, leave it as it is, and then let's just focus on the politicians and have the whole damn thing thrown out? And then we can say, well, how about we reinstate something like Section 336 and move the hobby out of this commercial drone space regulation? We need to draw a clear distinction between the two, like we did before, and say the FAA is clearly incapable of providing adequate and sensible regulation for the hobby. So once again, we must take that responsibility from them, the people whose regulatory abilities have cost the lives of over 300 people this year in 2 airline crashes alone, and put it back in the hands of the community itself, which has an impeccable track record of safety and responsibility over many decades. So I'm still formulating some of these strategies, but the thing, in my video, I called on other organizations to contact me because we do need to have a coordinated attack. I say attack, there's an enemy, a coordinated strategy so that we're not standing on each other's toes and we present a common front in some areas, but we take advantage of our differences to provide complementary approaches in other areas. The problem is, so far, no one's come back to me. So the AMA, they're obviously got their own ideas. They think they know what they're doing. They don't need anyone's help. And I'm surprised and a little disappointed that no one else has actually come back and said, yeah, how are we going to work together? It's like we're still very disparate. Everyone's pulling, hopefully pulling in the same direction. But because we're not pulling in harmony, we may not have the amount of pull we need. And that ends my rant.
Well, certainly, Bruce. We're from an FPVFC perspective. We're happy to work with you. We appreciate your presence and support, and so we want to reciprocate. In addition, we've been able to contact a number of vertical media, so not the general media. And I agree with you. Mainstream media is critical, but we will be able to get folks who have 500,000, 1 million viewers a month, and so we're working with organizations of that size. So we're with you. We want to work with you, and as your thoughts progress, we'll work it on this side of the globe.
And related to what Bruce was saying, I'm curious to getting more of the media involved. I'm curious to hear from the UFTA crew if Enoch or Old Gravy Leg want to speak about what they're planning to get the media more involved.
All right. Well, so we got a protest that we're planning on February 29th before the comment period is up across the street from the FAA. I got a park. I submitted a permit. I own a production company in Massachusetts, so I'm going to try to bring down equipment for it. And yeah, that's where we're at. So we're about to launch a website, start taking donations to fund all the extras, like whether it be protest T-shirts or pamphlets or signs that people want to walk around and picket with. But I've worked out the regulations, and I think we'll be fine legally. Be able to get away with a protest, maybe even for 2 days, like the 29th and the 1st.
That would be awesome if the media would show up and cover that.
Well, that's
Does
the point.
anybody-
The media doesn't give a fuck about a Discord. You know? Like,
Does
you guys
anybody
showing
know
it. This is a
anybody
nice
from
showing.
NPR?
Global drone pilots meet on the internet to discuss issues. Doesn't
Yeah,
make a
no
very
one
good
cares
headline.
about that. Yeah. But when you show up and you're protesting and you look organized enough to have a stage tent and an audio system and guest speakers the whole day, then it's going to be a little bit different. And we can invite the media and have them talk to people.
So, what's your thought on what's the messaging? Is it along the lines of what we've been advocating of professional, polite, constructive criticism, or are you going to be a little more combative?
No, it's polite. It's doing
polite, but
it's basically like kind of, hey, this ain't happening. Here, all these people are here and traveled however far to make sure this doesn't happen.
Yeah, we're gonna be there
don't
to
have the
tell
right.
them you can go fuck yourself. Or you're gonna put us in an FRIA zone. Not happening. Not gonna happen.
Okay.
So that's
We need a good cop, bad cop situation. Again, this is about coordination. A good cop, bad cop works really well because you get both people that are radically inclined and people who are more conservatively inclined. Another thing for the media point of view is I'm going to probably raise the issue. There's this crazy guy in New Zealand who designed his own cruise missile back in 2003 and tried to warn the world about this catastrophe. And now he's saying, I was wrong. And the risk really isn't there because it could have been done at any time in the last 17 years. It hasn't been done. Security is not an issue. People playing with their toys in their own areas, they're not a threat to the national security. They're not a danger to the public. And we're going to prove it because they're all going to fly together on this one day at this one time, and you will see for yourself.
Okay.
Well, I've been Bruce. I've been paraphrasing something that you said, and that is reasonable regulations will result in large-scale non-compliance, and that's a long and a polite way of saying that it ain't gonna happen. And,
People need to not be polite. They need to get fucking angry, and nobody's getting fucking angry. Like, this affects so much more than just us flying FPV drones. This affects like the way kids are going to come up. It's the same stuff that happened with firearms, and look what just happened in Virginia. Boots on the fucking ground made a difference.
Right,
Nobody got hurt. Nobody was harmed.
Well, exactly, and I was talking to my son about the Virginia protest, and I thought the protesters were brilliant on a number of tactics that they used. One is that they refused to be funneled into pens, and they retained their. It was completely peaceful, brilliant. And three, the icing on the cake is they had some of their groups stay behind and clean the entire area. And I thought, oh, that's a high bar for any group to follow with a protest. It could have been just terrible, but brilliant execution on a peaceful protest, and they got the message across.
Say, Gravy, I'm curious to hear you say how this would affect your job or your professional flying drone stuff.
I'll have to get a new fucking job. I mean, I'm in the process of getting my private pilot's license because I have one that's going to be flying a planned 86-pound payload. And now we can't even do that unless everything. I mean, that's another route we can go. We can register everything as a light aircraft or an experimental, and get an N number instead of a, like a regular drone ID number. But it's, I mean, I'm screwed, especially mainly flying around populated cities and airports. We're screwed. I mean, what am I gonna do? Replace 14 different drones that don't have ID tags?
So I'm a 61-year-old old fart. So this is as impassioned as my voice gets. But I'm dedicating my time full time to this activity. We're dedicating a tremendous amount of energy to fight this in any sensible way. And I think as Bruce was describing, if it's a good cop, bad cop, and we're taking a more conservative approach. We're working with the FAA. We're trying to be collaborative.
Yeah, I mean, I think our approach is that we know the FAA doesn't give a fuck about us. We believe that, right? That the FAA doesn't care. Military contractors want to get into that airspace and start selling anti-drone gear.
Some of the areas that I to make sure that I don't know if folks have started to pour through the doc. To me, first and foremost, is characterize the manufacturer restrictions. The amateur built only. If you fall into amateur built only, then you're restricted to fly in a FRIA.
Yeah, so they're gonna put everybody's hobbies in a prison.
Then we're looking at mission and airspace as a category, and to me, we talk about shielded operations, and the approach that we're taking is that the standard UAS ID is probably sensible for beyond visual line of sight, but then putting forward for when it modify the limited section, like that to be what the requirements are today, which is if it's in uncontrolled airspace, then we should be able to fly up to 400 feet, and if you're in controlled airspace.
Yeah, I was just going to ask that, TextJet. Dave, your voice is like getting louder and quieter and louder and quieter, and we're only getting like every few words.
I'm not sure he can hear us.
With
to
our
be
finger,
honest.
a polygon or an outline area shape on a Lance app.
Yeah, I'm not so sure Dave can hear us at all.
The cylinder or the column or the three-dimensional polygon.
All right. Well, you guys can hear me. What I want to know is, why are we giving up any movement with this when the ARC finding didn't find anything?
Another quick survey. One of the things that has come up is the UAS registration is one for every drone, and that's the way it is today. If you're flying 107, but if you're flying recreational, you register yourself. And there's a in the assumption data sources, surveys, the NPRM characterizes I think it's 2. I think it's about this 2 or 3 in drones, and the lifespan is 3 years, and the average price of a price point or cost to us of a drone is $114. And so these are really important numbers, because if you think about, it's a low price and there are not that many of them and they have a brief lifespan, then that says you could refresh the fleet across the entire country, everyone's aircraft, in a short period of time. So there's no need to create any grandfathering. And these
Say, Dave, can you hear us at all?
Should be able to be upgraded with firmware upgrades only to be
compliant. Us, Dave?
So our assertion is none of
Dave, you hear us, bud?
To respectfully and constructively push as well as one of the first comments that we had this evening was about, I'd really like to upgrade my existing being able to retrofit and as a standard UAS remote, and meaning that it should be able to fly beyond visual line of sight. Ah,
All right, so I have a question for you. Are we giving anything up and not fighting to keep everything that we have now when ARC found nothing and they found no issues? And that's what they had in their recommendations final report of September 30th, 2017. Everybody should be posting that and saying, this is why we don't need RID. There is no proof that there is any threat.
Dave, were you able to hear Gravy there?
Just for the last 5 or 10 seconds. Thank you, David, for the text. I was going off on a soliloquy there the entire time, so my mic died. So apologies. Old Gravy didn't pick. I did pick up on just the tail end of that.
All right, Gravy. One more time. Why are we not putting up a big fight and saying that this is all unacceptable, even when the ARC, when the FAA was ignoring the ARC? Is that sort of what you were saying?
Yeah. Basically, this is what everybody here can use to say, no, this is not going to happen. You represent us as people, and you're a government. So here's the finding. You're not going to do this to us. Everything's fine the way it is, and everything that's in all those pages in that final report of the ARC recommendations, who surprisingly DJI was one of the only people that agreed with this and said, yeah, like we shouldn't go any further with rules.
Because if we give them an inch, they're going to take a mile.
Yeah, it's
Exactly.
again,
Where does
it'll
it
go
stop?
right back to gun
Yeah,
laws.
good
So
point.
here is the
And that's-
here
and
is
that's-
the proof, and this is before the Reauthorization Act. This should have stopped the Reauthorization Act. 336 at that time was fine.
And it's always best to argue from a place of strength, and then like if you need to compromise, you're not compromising away too much. And if you start with a compromise, then you're just weak, and they just steamroll you and forget about you. They don't even write about you in the history book.
They're just gonna keep whittling away and making a reason because you didn't put up a fight strong enough in the beginning.
And that's why UFDA is
I
going
do
to
agree,
the FAA.
but I would strongly suggest not drawing any frickin' parallels to gun rights. That's a can of worms you don't want to go down, and will probably be automatically rejected.
I'm comparing this to what happened with firearms. I'm not saying to.
Yeah, no, I get it.
But I
I
mean,
mean,
honestly, it's also
that is the model they will use if they try to limit access to the technology involved in having drones fly. Right? If they want to limit that technology, they have a blueprint and they'll use it.
Like in my state, I can't have more than 10 rounds, even though I have a machine gun license. Does that make any sense? It's the same thing. Why can I have a drone that's 250 grams if I can't be trusted? Or if I can be trusted with that, why can't I be trusted with one that's 1,000 grams or 86 pounds?
What state are you in?
Massachusetts.
And
I was gonna say I'm up in Wisconsin and I got an M60 with a full train, and that's no problem.
Yeah.
I just keep it at the police station.
No. Well, here I have an NFA trust, and I can get whatever I want that the state allows. So I can't have suppressors. I can't have belt-fed magazines, but I can have a fully automatic whatever I want.
So to build on your point with respect to the ARC, one of the I've already copied in the FOIA number, so the Freedom of Information Act number, that thanks to one of our great members, he requested how many. You've probably heard me say these numbers before, but it's in writing in the document. So from 2013 to 2018, the FAA states that there were 7,500 incidents. And through the FOIA, we asked for how many confirmed incidents were there, and the number is 14, 1-4. So of those 14, there were no deaths, no downed manned aircraft, and so that's good hard data, and that's what will be in our document that everyone is welcome to share in their own personal comments. In addition, in writing a document like the NPRM, the team that created the document is supposed to create a risk assessment. And so we've got a FOIA up. It's been up a week and a half, 2 weeks already. And we have to wait 20 days before we can start hassling the people and find out, what's the answer on the FOIA. So we are optimistic that we will have something prior to March 2nd to say about the risk assessment. So, we agree with respect to, we'll reference the ASTM F-38 work group, we'll reference the ARC, and we'll reference certainly the first Freedom of Information Act I mentioned, and hopefully the second one as well.
Say, Dave, someone earlier asked if we had any contact with any of the manufacturers.
Dan, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, Dave, but I'm
dear.
not sure you can hear us. I think
Dave just likes to hog the conversation.
Yeah, he's having some trouble with his system for sure.
Yeah,
probably here too. It's the same.
So,
can hear some people, but not others. It's,
that's a bummer.
The Discord keeps dropping out.
It doesn't like having this many people here. Yeah, go ahead, Ryfly.
So I found out something actually kind of interesting in my local area. We have a few RC clubs, AMA clubs, things like that, but none of them are really actually active. And I found out by going down to my local RC shop, none of them had any clue about all this stuff that's going down. So, I mean, we already know that advertising about it has been localized. We drone people are heavy into it because it seriously affects how we operate. But now I'm in the process of reserving a local field, a local park to put on a whole just RC day just to get my local community involved. Because the more I talk to people about it, the more they're like, "Are you kidding me? This is insane." Local pilots associations don't even know what's going on. I've got a client of my girlfriend. She runs one of the helicopter tour areas. I live down in Myrtle Beach. They had no clue. They thought all drones that were out there were either DJI Mavics or military drones. So at this point, I'm just trying to introduce a mass number of people into this, let them know the major aspects of what's going on with this, which, we've all already discussed. We're all very, very familiar with it.
That's a great approach.
Yeah, I agree.
I've also got,
totally a good
I'm also
idea.
trying to get my congressman involved into it because he's very local, because I'm trying to hit it from a secondary side as well, with trying to get my local county to set up a very large RC park as a FRIA. Make one that's for everybody. Cars, planes, drones, everything like that. Because my biggest fear is, like everyone else's, that the FAA is going to give us the big middle finger, do what they want, and then we're going to have FRIAs that just disappear within 5 to 10 years.
That's 100% guaranteed.
It's going to happen.
Yeah.
Right. Well, because all the fields they're all leased. They're all
and then also
owned by
FRIA
somebody.
Only lets you fly to 400 feet. You can apply maybe.
All the regulations are that way.
Right.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, like, when you're locked in a field, just fucking kill yourself. You know what I mean? Like, fuck life. You're in a field.
Right. But
So
that's what I'm saying. I want to create an actual park so that we have like an airstrip for planes and helicopters, and then we got like a mini rampage event going on. So we have actual stuff for drones. It's no different than what they did for skateboarders with creating large scale skate parks, and now there's entire indoor arenas for all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
but that's the last ditch effort.
When you try to get a bunch of people into a small area to fly a bunch of drones that are operating on very similar frequencies, then you are going to start seeing stuff fall out of the sky, because you've got all these people just showing up to opposite sides of a park that don't, either don't know or don't care. And I mean, you know, that could pose a huge problem as well.
I don't want to pay the
It's not
AMA,
perfect.
you know, because they didn't fight for me in this whole thing. So it's like you're gonna then cuck me into paying the AMA to go fly at a field where all the ones near me ban me anyways. It's like no.
Well, that's my
Well,
problem. All of my
there's a-
local AMA fields are anti-drone.
Yeah.
There's another community, and that's FPV racing. And so we've gotten a hold of DRL as well as Multi-GP, and so we're asking them to reach out, and we'll provide if they want something tailored to get the word out to the folks who fly at races and or who are race spectators.
And I would like to emphasize one thing that Ryfly said, that he went to his local hobby shop and made sure they knew about this, and it would be great if everybody who has a local hobby shop near them stopped by, chatted with them, make sure they understand what's going on, and try to spread the word by word of mouth as much as possible.
Bring the link to the NPRM written on a piece of paper because it's going to be an old man there.
Also not a bad idea.
Correct.
Yes and no.
Nothing against old men.
It's so good that it's pushed to talk because I bought an old DX8 off of that old man.
Oh dear.
Can I ask a silly question?
Please.
Is indoor flying like legal, right?
That's correct, because the FAA has no authorization indoors.
So if you had like a big, like 4,000 foot high building or warehouse or whatever hangar, you're flying there all day long.
That's correct.
With that said, what if you have like a building with like netted windows, or you can't, you know, you got windows but they got nets across them? I guess that'd be legal too.
That's correct.
What if those windows got bigger and bigger and bigger until you just
There's a roof.
Well, but then you're still caging it in with the netting, right? Like that's the thing, is we don't want to be caged in, period.
Oh no, I get that, but you know, I mean, one could get ridiculous and have these 1,000-foot towers with all this net in between them.
Right.
Yeah, what you're talking about is every single.
Would be.
You're talking about every bar's smoking section now because they can't smoke indoors.
Yeah, essentially.
Anyway,
everybody's going back to parking lots where we came from.
Yeah, but anyway,
so
it's just an idea.
One of the interesting anomalies from the limited remote ID is if that's a device that has to see GPS. And so, okay, I'm outside, I'm flying in my little 400-foot dome, and now I take it inside to fly. Oh, I can't see GPS. The device won't take off, and that's a unintended consequence. But that's that would further limit a design of a drone. So it's not the intent of the FAA to authorize or to try to create any authority indoors, but there'll be, if they go ahead with this limited device, that will be one of the knock-on effects.
So I do have a question in regards to the IDs. The FAA representatives at CES said that the idea was that you basically have a RID equivalent to like Google Sky Maps, where you can just hold your phone up and be able to get that snapshot, and it was only going to do a lat long of location data and the registration number or serial number or whatever it is they're going to use. But last I checked, all of those registration numbers, you could go then look up online and find out everybody's detailed information about it. Are they actually going to make that? Because they keep saying they want it public so that everybody can look and see who this is and see if somebody's legal. Is there full intent just to dox everybody?
It's to narc on everybody. Be able to make it easy for your neighbors.
So let's break
by.
Let's break that into two pieces. The first piece, the one that just has so many of us just into apoplectic fits, is that you're the location of the operator as well as the location of the drone is something that the FAA has put in the NPRM as being publicly available, and that just makes us insane.
I
Because
agree, especially because I fly with my daughter and she's 10.
Exactly.
Supposedly they're supposed to also have some ability to like give you a code, and it'll give a code, and then you submit a code, and then it'll poop out.
Right. That was the second point, and so there is some provision for not all of your personal information that is available, theoretically to law enforcement only, would be available so that you can use your FAA registration number for that specific device or an aliased session ID. And to me, that's frankly, that great. So they can't easily, you cannot easily find out where I live, but you still know where I am as the operator and where my drone is in the sky, and that it's just yeah. That
So
just
can I throw this in there? That proposes like a even bigger problem yet. So you want us to have our eyes covered up, not able to uncover them quickly, and have everybody know where the fuck we're standing with our eyes covered. Yeah, that's real safe for us.
Nothing in this NPRM makes FPV legal.
Well, and also nothing in the NPRM
you have a spotter.
has a regulation against FPV. The NPRM defaults back to 107 or to 349, which says for recreational we can fly FPV, but of course we need a visual observer. So I'm just reiterating the chapter and verse what the rules are today. So we're still okay even with the NPRM for FPV, but the limited UAS remote ID in my
guess what
mind
I'm
is
saying is spotter or
untenable.
no spotter.
Flying in a 400-foot dome, flying in and so I take my limited device to a FRIA, and guess what? The devices can only fly in a 400-foot dome away from me as the operator because electronically that's how it's supposed to be established.
Limited RID.
So
you are.
Yeah. So we're part of our request is that we feel that for recreational and unequipped UAS, that if you're in controlled airspace and you submit a request to fly through Lance, you should be good to go up to 400 feet AGL.
Hey, if I can spoof my location for Pokemon Go, I can spoof my location for drones.
I was gonna say we need somebody to start working on RFID spoofers. I was literally about to say that.
Pretty fucking simple. It'll be about a week.
Mesh networks of spoofers everywhere on their roofs. Fuck it.
But that's why it's supposed to be tamper resistant.
That's
I'll put one on the roof of my car and just drive around.
Yeah.
Yeah. What are they going to use? An FTDI adapter? Nobody has those in this hobby.
Right. Yeah.
I got one.
And spoofing GPS is probably what you also said. I blanked out there.
Yeah. Or also spoofing personal information so you can fuck somebody over that you don't like just by flying a drone over like an airport, and it's somebody else's problem.
Or a prison, as was mentioned earlier. Yeah, absolutely. That is to me a huge issue.
People aren't talking about how the price of drugs in prison is going to go up because of this.
Jesus.
Someone had to say it.
Are they allowed to comment on the NPRM?
They should be.
It's open to public. They are public.
Damn, that'd be so funny. You just see like thousands and thousands of prisoners. It's like, don't take my weed away.
If I may say something, I've just kind of noticed over the years, though, that's kind of ironic because everyone's technically transmitting like it. Most people like 200 or me like 800 all the time and stuff, and so I got myself a FC, amateur radio license, and so it makes me think I can do that legally and stuff. But before I was like all worried about it before I got my license, and so I did, and so I mean, but most everybody, like probably 90% of the community flies without an FCC license, but nobody gets busted or anything. So
Well,
I'm
well,
wondering
flying with
oh,
so the
if I might.
FCC issue is a little different, and
Okay.
so interestingly, the frequencies that we fly our VTXs on are in the amateur hobby, so they're really not even supposed to be used for 107. But let's assume that we're just talking recreational. We're flying legally. If one of the things that was happening in 2018 was that the VTXs were coming over to the United States and they were flying, or they were transmitting into navigation and emergency frequencies. And so the way the FCC circular is written, did I go?
I can still hear
No,
you,
we hear
Dave.
We
you.
can still hear you.
We hear you.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Yep, we
Yeah,
got
we
you.
got
The
you.
way, the way the circular was written is that if you are the manufacturer, the retailer, or the user, you're culpable. And so we figured, oh my gosh, no one's going to be able to find us. Who's going to do this? So, in point of fact, there are a lot of hams around the country who look for violations like this. So you could be tracked down, but that's low odds. But certainly the retailers were charged huge fines. So
You generally don't have them looking for that kind of stuff unless you start stomping on amateur radio signals. Then they will find you.
Bingo. I agree completely.
And
Yeah,
also, a lot of the stuff that you can buy in stores is FCC compliant, so it's not.
Yeah,
you're-
it's so that's if it's Part 15 FCC compliant, that that gets better and better, and we're I'm optimistic that as our hobby advances, we will see more of that.
TBS unifies if is compliant.
I'm sorry, say again.
Is it
Yes, all of
unified?
TBS
Yes,
equipment is compliant.
Oh, really?
That,
Oh.
yeah.
that is
That's why
it's
you have
written
to.
on the
That's why
actual
you have to.
VTX.
That's why you have to unlock to go to the higher wattages.
that's right.
But how much? Well, given with the other side of that, my reason why I made the FCC comment was with so little busting of people and everything because of all the bans, because other people have used like 1.2, 2.4, etc., and even 900. So how police state will the FAA be to find like people who will still fly their drones in civil disobedience, because some of y'all will, not saying who might or might not.
Volley, have you seen the video I posted? The real consequences of drone remote ID? They already have private military contractors ready to engage your drone. What they need is a rule that says you're a bad actor and you're a criminal, right? So once they have a rule that says anybody without an RID is a bad actor, then anybody without an RID can be engaged. And then it's going to turn into a thing where there's a profit motive and private military contractors can get a cushy contract where they hit up a state and the states will say, listen, nobody's going to allow you to fly your freaking Amazon drones and have your deliveries unless the state's compliant. So the state will get compliant and they will hire these private military contractors to be like sky police, and they'll go and they'll freaking triangulate people and they'll do all the things that they need to do to find out where these things are. They'll put up like towers places, and it'll make it really easy for them to find people quickly, and then they can engage them. And that might mean a $1,400 fine. It might mean all sorts of nasty
So
things.
basically begins a drone buster type of competition.
It could
And
possibly
it's not
be
even that hard for them to do it, especially
it's
because
super
we're
easy.
running off of the 5
And
gigahertz range. They can just publicly tap into every Wi-Fi modem that's put out there by every service provider, and they create a blanket net, and all they have to do is look for that spike slightly outside the range.
Yep, and then they can pinpoint it.
Yeah, they triangulate with your neighbors, and you would never even know it.
Yeah, again, I can see this though escalating more, because there are going to be other people. I mean, people who are going to still find ways around, different frequencies, hopping or optical, etc. And there
Well,
will
I
be
pissed
people
off
who
my
make
HOA
it
by
their,
going up and down
and
the
there will
block
be,
plugging in.
and there'll be people also make it their mission to try to take down.
Exactly. This is like when this gets passed, this is going to potentially open up a different type of market.
I've had 5 friends of mine ask me about this, like the interdiction of drones as like a business they want to get into.
Oh, jeez, that's terrible.
Oh,
and they're
so
in
we're all
IT.
interdictors.
Well,
So
here,
let me
I'm gonna post that
let me
meme
just
again.
let me just mention that
We're
one
dicks.
thing that Bruce said earlier, and one thing that was just mentioned, there is no legislation that needs to pass in order for remote ID to go into effect. The FAA has
No.
the authority to set a rule. So, the legislation was passed back in 2018 in their Reauthorization Act. Drone interdiction, capture, kill service.
And I also like to point out that we've been going for a little over an hour now, and we're going to have to start wrapping this up. But definitely, if you've got more questions related to the NPRM, fire them off before we have to call it quits for tonight.
I'd like to make a statement real quick before we continue, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure.
We're so we on this protest that UFDA crew is doing, we will have information regarding our procedure on February 29th. So just to kind of keep that in mind, we'll have all the details on our website at www.ufdacrew.com. So
That's
just,
right. Is that
we might
is
have
that
a
you?
link to a third-party website because we're gonna probably put up one directly related to the protest instead of running that on our website. But we will have links to a information website where people can RSVP, and we'll be able to start collecting logistics info. So I know if I have to scale up the amount of equipment that I'm bringing.
That's going to be in DC, right?
it's going to, the FAA headquarters in Washington, D.C. on February 29th. And we plan on bringing the news media to us. So we've
just
got,
make sure you define which building because there's 2.
Yeah, well, we're
protesting
smack dab in front of one
There's
of them.
4
so.
actually, but 2 headquarters.
Oh, okay.
There's a
We've
picture of
been
the
working
main
on this
protest
for the last couple weeks. Yeah, here's the map. I mean, we've been doing work for the last 2 weeks organizing this, and we're at a point where we're ready to launch it in the next few days. So just check back on the website if you're wanting to know more about it. We're going to make this a public known announcement.
Yeah, we're gonna get industry partners involved as soon as the website is up, and we're advertising. The industry partners will get up on the website with us. So anybody who wants to partner with us in this protest, you gotta hit me up or hit Mike Rhodes up. Old Grave Leg.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, that reminds me, Dave, there was a question way back. Someone was asking if we've been in contact with any of the manufacturers, such as Horizon Hobby or anybody else, and if there's anything you can say about that.
Yeah, I had the pleasure to meet the general counsel of Horizon Hobby. He's responsible for their NPRM response, and so I provided him with everything we've written, and I'll continue that dialogue. We've reached out to get FPV. Have not heard back from them. I have spoken with the head of Ready Made RC. Reached out to Flight Test. Have not heard back from them. Let's see,
Nobody's heard back from Flight Test.
Right. And yeah, that's it. And then also other retailers as well. But I think those are the main manufacturers. And also had a good conversation with Tyler Dobbs, the AMA Director of Governmental Affairs. And I heard the comments earlier, but this is along the lines of a common unified voice is what we're trying to achieve. Yeah. Question up there. How about Ready Made RC? Yeah, I spoke with the founder of Ready Made RC.
Any other questions? So someone made a comment that the flight test guys have been very quiet. Have they talked about anything beyond their couple YouTube videos about their proposal to be a CBO?
Bixler sat down on an FAA thing.
Can you say that again? I got a lot of people talking.
Bixler was at CES and was on a panel.
Yeah, I did see that video. Yep.
We'll be reaching out.
That CES thing was the FAA letting all of us know what they're really doing. Everybody should go watch the FAA CES videos. They're disgusting.
One of the things that was interesting that Jay Merkel said was, we're going to have the ASTM standard as a reference standard in remote ID. And that's a little different from what was written in the document. So pretty interesting comment.
Yeah, it is.
Is there even a standard, an ASTM standard? I mean, has that actually been written yet?
Yes, it has, and it's been it's through balloting and it's published. I can get you the
right.
I can get the work group number of it.
Okay. Well, you know what? That's fine. I can look it up.
It's the F38 group, and it has to do with UAS monitoring and tracking. Is the title of it?
Sounds good.
Yeah, TextJet. This is the ASTM standard. You may have seen a YouTube video out there put out by Wing, I believe, where Josh Bixler was in it flying around, and it's not perfect, but it's way closer to something acceptable.
Lockness, you're feeding back.
Okay, hopefully people were able to hear sort of what I said there.
Yeah, I think we got it. That the ASTM work, and it is the ASTM standard is what we based and pointed to from the DAC recommendation to the FAA on remote ID back in October. Yeah, I think it's pretty sensible.
Yeah. Anything else before we go?
Is there any chance that they're going to back down from the you must register every drone to we could just do it as a pilot registry?
Well, I think that comes down to whether or not it's going to be all serial number based.
I just need everybody to start being positive and believe that you can make the frickin' NPRM say whatever you want, right? You just have to get your ass to DC and tell them what the fuck you need it to say. And it's going to say none of this bullshit. Right? Because we have the safety thing. We have the safety thing. It says that we're safe. So we take that and we run with it and do a touchdown.
It's DC.
When is
no
it
guns.
now? Fight.
Yeah,
When?
no guns, no drones. Don't bring your drones.
No guns.
Yeah, because
That's a no-fly zone.
Absolutely.
No tiny whoops. None of that stuff's going to be happening on this protest.
Right.
Don't even
We're not just there for drones. We're there for the whole entire hobby itself.
Cool.
I've got permits for signs and picketing material, so that's all fine.
When is it going to be again?
February 29th.
All right.
Yeah, don't be like us in Virginia. Everybody thinks that we had a huge victory, but I can tell you, as living in Virginia, everybody's looking at it like everybody that brought their guns to the protest are the ones that are going to get our guns taken away. Like, don't be those people with your whoops and stuff.
Yep.
Yeah, we don't want none of that there. And if we do see anybody bring whoops and start flying it, we'll shut it down. And
if you want to take a picture of your quad like it just died, right? Take a picture of your fucking here. I've got a descriptive photo.
Dan Hammer.
We will bring a battery. We will bring a battery and a fucking VTX and plug in on you if you do.
I want a bunch of 12-year-old kids holding pictures of their drone, like their drone just freaking died, and you walk around like that, and then it's like no one's scared of a freaking picture.
We'll have balloons there that say a message on it, and we'll be passing those out. So if you do bring a tiny whoop, put a string on it.
Okay. So grab the nearest kid and have him pouch.
That's genius. Put a string on it. That's brilliant.
Tether flight's not legal.
We'll have rental kids available. Everybody who's taking media pictures, grab a rental kid. Make sure that it's a freaking tearjerker, and we're good.
Excellent. Other comments and questions?
Hey, Dave, I've got a quick question for you. Do y'all need any help with research or looking for sources or providing data? I know the
Yes.
FAA was looking for data specifically about some of those assumptions, like the number of drones that are out there and the price of drones and some of that other stuff.
Yes. Could you shoot me an email, and I'll divvy up some of the research I'm doing on that. I'm hoping I didn't just drop out.
I heard you.
Couldn't hear you.
Great.
Census, I just want to let everybody know that I lost all my drones in a tragic boating accident with my firearms.
True. I
I'm
was
sorry.
there. I witnessed
I was
that.
with.
It was-
Yep, we were there. Lost ours
Yes.
too.
I'm
And
sorry.
Did you get the shirt with it too?
Yep.
And
Lost
all
the
the
boat,
video
too.
I've ever taken that I will ever post to YouTube has already been taken and recorded in the past.
Yeah.
Just pulling from the vault.
I'll have to check to see if I can get a permit to do amateur fireworks there.
In DC? on the
Probably,
mall?
I'm gonna say no.
No.
There, it depends on what's
It's gonna be a
going
big
on.
fat no.
We're
Yeah.
a mile away from the Capitol Mall, so I doubt that is ever gonna
Yeah.
happen.
Yeah. It's
Not
a
even a
couple,
mile.
hundred
Yeah.
yards. Yeah, you're right there.
They've
Yeah,
had,
you're
can't
right
even
on
bring
top of it.
You
yeah.
can't even
We
bring
don't- we
a
don't
gun
wanna
that if you
cause-
pull the trigger, a sign comes out of the barrel and says "bang." You can't do that in
Look,
DC.
the whole
so-
point
If
of
we're
this
having
is
a
not
protest,
to go.
right? It's got to look good. You know, the media's
It's
coming.
gotta- yeah, it's
like,
looked good.
ideally, we make something
We
that
want
gets,
people on our
that
sides.
gets so much momentum. Bixler, even though he doesn't fucking answer his text messages or his emails, he just shows up, right? Because he'll be a fucking fool if he doesn't. You know? And so that's where we're going with this. Like, everybody's got to freaking show up. It's the last chance you have to show
The
up.
whole point of this protest is a widely media coverage. I mean, it's gonna spread, and the more people we have there, the better. But we're not there to cause a riot. We're there to speak our rights on this whole matter of this proposal. We don't need anybody coming and jeopardizing the hobby any more than what it's already doing. So, come with the intent on helping change the proposal and be there as a supportive icon.
Well said.
Is other countries, are they gearing towards this, or are there other countries that are going to be more free than the United States?
Canada has restrictions about 250 grams or worse. The UK has very restrictive drone regulations right now. The European Union is trying to. They have a document out that is effectively a circular that describes all of what they want to do, and so, as they would say in Texas, they're fixing to work on it. And of course, New Zealand and Australia have drone regulations in place already. And I don't know what about a.
And to build on what Dave was saying, the only other place that has remote ID based regulations is the EU, I believe, which is kicking off this summer. And theirs are much less restrictive than ours. If you comply with remote ID, you gain privileges, but if you don't comply with remote ID, you don't lose anything you currently have today.
That's a decent plan.
Like,
Yeah.
if I could home build and, like, just, Velcro a remote ID on there and it didn't give away my position and I could dive clouds, fuck yeah. That'd be fine. But they want to make us prisoners and they want to kill STEM. So it's unacceptable.
Yeah,
Right.
and also it helps so many people who, see this as like a different way of life from previous things, from issues from PSTD and addictions and stuff and boredom, and just like so much knowledge is learned messing with it.
Exactly.
It's gonna mess with the technology as it advances. They're taking that ability of us being able to
Innovate.
come up. Exactly. We're going backwards with this whole proposal.
Well, we'll go backwards while China puts their fucking balls on our chin. Because they're not going to do this shit in China. They're going to be fine with you diving any fucking building there is right next to people. Still.
And China's got basically simple rules. You stay away from military, you stay away from airports, you stay away from government things. If you don't, you go to prison and probably die. Otherwise, have at it.
Give me those rules. I'm down.
I know.
I mean,
Hard
I think that's
labor.
the way it is.
Let's all go move in with Skadoosh.
Bro,
No, they got
you
that.
don't know
giant
how
hole
hard
right
I'm
there.
debating that.
Another thing to keep in mind too is to think about the chaos that they're causing by doing this, because we already know that as soon as this proposal gets passed, it's gonna happen where drones are gonna get flown anyways without remote ID. You know how many already
You're damn
pre-built
right.
drones there are? So I just don't think they understand the magnitude of conflict they're gonna end up getting once this proposal is passed.
Yeah.
You know, you're gonna
And
have
as we said, we think there are a number of people in the FAA who do understand it. They do understand that there's 1.5 million drones in the United States, and they do understand that 0 of them are able to firmware upgrade to be compliant.
And they want us to submit comments saying that there will be
Right.
mass non-compliance if this
Right.
goes through.
Right.
Right.
Well, yeah, I'm
I
not
see
going to
that.
comply. I have fucking almost $1 million
I'll never
sitting in
comply.
my
Look,
shop
we have
worth of.
they don't
Organized find me to
crews.
death.
We have organized crews right now that do it legally. And what's going to happen is you're going to end up formulating crews, and it's going to become trendy to be the criminal in flying drones.
Yeah,
Well,
I mean,
make
how
it-
many
make-
people?
make it
How many
criminal
people
to start
still
with.
skate? How many people
Exactly.
still skate street, even though there are public skate parks? I mean, what did that do? Give
I
a
never went to the
place for the
skate
cops to localize people? Me either.
I ran away from 5 cops at a time.
I
Sometimes
was
fucking
a
ducking
professional
them,
BMX
sometimes
rider
rolling.
for 21 years, and I never hardly ever went to a skate park.
Not a
Ever.
public
Yeah.
one, at least.
Where are you gonna die?
I'm just saying,
Tony Hawk.
it's going to be the same way with this hobby.
And I remember the one good thing that happened at a skate park was we got in a fight with all the rollerbladers. We kicked their ass. That'll happen. You know, and then maybe we'll get an AME.
Fruit booters.
These old guys will just fucking, you know, it'll be like what is it, Happy Gilmore?
Okay, the old guys are on the phone.
Yeah.
All right,
I didn't
guys, can
expect
we
him to have a left hook like that? Fuck.
can we try to wrap this up? It's getting pretty late.
All right.
I'm just getting fucking fired up. Jesus.
Yeah, we haven't even
Well,
started drinking yet.
I gotta stop. I gotta stop the recording so I can publish the video at some point here.
Yeah.
Oh Jesus, there's a video of this. Well, let it be known that one of my coworkers got ramp checked for legally flying in Boston today, and he got held up for over a fucking hour because he had all his paperwork and waivers and everything in order, and it wasn't good enough. So thanks for costing us a fucking hour of production time.
Oh, that sucks.
It's
Yeah,
a daily thing. It happens all the time, constantly.
And for anybody who doesn't know, I post the video recording of this to the FPVFC YouTube channel as soon as I can after the meeting's over. So for anybody who misses it, they can rewatch it. And we also have this available as a podcast if you want to listen to it.
A video?
Hey,
I mean, what video is there?
Well, it's
Hey,
just a video recording of the Discord channel, so people can see the chats and watch the memes go by.
I just want to reach out to whoever that last caller was. Like, that was an awesome story. This is all gravy. Like, I just want to let you know that was pretty cool.
Yeah, and I just want to say, if you're looking at that meme, drone interdiction, capture, kill service, and you're working for the FAA, we still love you. Just don't be dicks.
Well said, Enoch.
All right, gentlemen. I think that that's a wrap. Thank you all.
Sounds good.
Thank you all for joining. Thanks for the discussion.
Thanks, everybody. See you
Thank you.
later.